John 20. Jesus among his disciples, 19 to 31. So we know that it was the first day of the week, so a Sunday, and then the doors were shut. The disciples were together due to the fear of the Jews, and then Jesus appeared to them, showed them both his hands and his side, and then John wrote in here something that we did not see in other gospel, that he breathed on them and said to them, receive the Holy Spirit. And so my question when reading that was that why there was the Pentecost where the Holy Spirit came down. So Jesus breathed on them right now. So like, why did they also have to wait for the Pentecost? And like, it was in reference, I was also thinking about an earlier conversation with the young family group that I was with, that like what was it that, because one pastor was saying how the disciples disobeyed by going to Galilee. And so I'm like, why would they disobey Jesus when they know that he's the Messiah and Lord? It just did not make sense. And so like, what was it that changed them to actually be on fire for God if the resurrection didn't? What was it? And so when I read that and I read this, I asked GPT, like, so what is it? Like, why? Like, I thought that it was when they received the Holy Spirit. And so, but then now that I read this was before that, like, before the Pentecost, they already received, like, God already breathed on them. And so that did not make sense any longer. And so GPT then told me that actually in Matthew 28, they were told to go to Galilee and wait for Jesus there. So then now that makes sense. That doesn't mean that the disciples were disobedient even after Jesus is resurrected. They actually, the resurrection did transform them. It did transform them in a wild way, which makes like total sense now. And so after that, um it after that, um that part is cleared out. And GPT also said, like, the God breathing on them right now is like giving them new life, like similar to when he breathed on Adam. And then, or Jesus breathed on them and God breathed into Adam, similar act. And but when they have the Holy Spirit, that is like when the church, like when they have evangelical, like capability, or like the spread to more. This is more personal and that is more ministry. And so that makes sense to me too. And so we know that Thomas, at the Jesus first appearance, he did not see Jesus, and then so Jesus appeared again and then told him to put his hands in the imprint of the nail and on his side. And so he did that. And it's interesting that some people say, oh, the glorified body that we have will be perfect, but it seems like the scars are still there. Like Jesus' scars are there. So I don't know if it's specific to Jesus. I don't think we'll have infirmities and viruses and like disabilities, but I think the scars might still be there. I'm not sure. And so not only that, so 8 days later, then the thing that stood out to me this time, and from the message that the pastor spoke last week, was that Jesus, although he wasn't with Thomas when he said, oh, I need to put my hands where his scars was and stuff like that, like Jesus heard all of that. So in our resurrected body, we can go through walls. We're not limited by any physical space or anything like that. We can know what it is that other people say and need. And then Yeah, and then so do not continue. Jesus told him to do not continue in disbelief, but be a believer. And then Thomas said, "My Lord and my God." He believed. And then Jesus said, "Blessed are they who did not see and yet believe." And I think that's speaking to us. And so I hope that everyone who reads the Bible and listen to this is part of this blessed group, that we hear testimony, we read testimony from the Bible, and we study God and study Jesus, and we believe. We don't have to see him to believe him. So then John also wrote that there were many other signs which were not written in this book, but these have been written so that we might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing we may have life in his name. And that's awesome. I mean, that's exactly what is needed.